Okay, it's a school day. I'm at school up here at Lewis F. Mayer Junior High, and Diane is over there in school in the 4th grade. I wish they would send me back to the 4th grade so I could be in class with her. And then I could sit next to her and make casual conversation with her and say what a gasser. And even if her parents don't want us being together, we could be together anyway. And anyway, I'm going to call up her classroom right now. Hello, this is Joe Aufricht, calling Mrs. Kunkel's room, calling Mrs. Kunkel's room. Do you read me, Mrs. Kunkel's room? Mrs. Kunkel's room. They still don't answer. Mrs. Kunkel's room. Still not answering. Mrs. Kunkel's room!
Hi, honey. Are you coming to the bowling alley tonight?
Yes, honey.
You better, 'cause I want you to keep score for my team.
Yes, dear. I'll be there. You want me to buy a Kit Kat bar, too?
Yes.
Want me to buy a ginger ale, too?
Yes.
Is your mom coming down to the bowling alley while you're bowling tonight?
Yes.
Is she taking you home so that you don't have to walk all that ways?
Yes.
Think she'll let me come over with you guys?
Yes.
Do you think she'll let me stay for dinner?
Yes.
Do you think she'll let me spend the night?
No.
Oh, that's a bummer. That's bogus. Here's a little something else I'm going to do for this tape. What a gasser. What a gasser. I'm gonna flush you down. I'm gonna cover up the toilet seat. I love throwing dust bunnies down the toilet and flushing them down. On a bright and dreary day. Dinner bell. Oh, Now, ain't that cute?
Ain't that cute?
No, it isn't. Yes, it is.
Well, honey, it sure smells good. Mmm, yum. Good liver. Mmm.
I'm glad you like it, honey.
Mm. Hey, kids, don't do that at the table. You'll behave yourself right now. Eat that. Hey, what is this? You got peas all over the floor. After I come home from work. Well, thanks a lot. Stinks a lot. Stinks a lot.
Cut it out, Joe.
Okay, where's the scissor? You're nothing but a barrel of monkeys. Oh dear, oh dear, how dear you were to me. How dare you let the guns roll. Was only up in kindergarten. Fall in love and have sex. A fart, a fuck, a fooey on you. A fooey, a fooey, a fooey on you. Oh no, the lights went out, lights went out, lights went out. Oh no, the lights went out. You're gonna get raped by the boogeyman. Oh no, the lights went out, lights went out, lights went out. Oh no, the lights went out. You're gonna get raped by the boogeyman. Oh, you are getting sick and tired, like an oldie man. You are getting sick and tired, just like an oldie man. Little squirty honeys.
But my name isn't Honey.
I don't care, your name is Honey. Little squirty honeys.
Oh, don't call me that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't care, your name is Honey. You're a little squirty honey. Squirty as in you're a little squirt. I'll pound you into the ground. TV. Myself. Antenna. Someone in I know the little me. Someone in I know the little me. Minute, anunut. Minute, anunut. Come to me, a me, a me, a me, come to me, a me, come to me, a me, a me. All right, enough. Enough! You little bitch and bastard! What do
you think you're doing?
What's the matter?
Here I go. Reow. Reow. Here I go. Reow. Reow.
Ever since he got his tape recorder.
Okay, I will spend the rest of this tape devoted to talking about how I fell in love with a girl named Diane Rawson. Okay, when I was 13, she was 9. That's when I discovered her. I was still in the 6th grade when I turned 13 at the end of the year, and she probably turned 9, and I walked past her in the hall, and she had this certain kind of look about her. It was kind of cute, but at the same time I felt kind of sadistic toward her. I wasn't sure what to feel because I was perhaps just coming into puberty. Well, actually, I didn't get any pubic hairs till I was 14, or going on 14, close to 14. I started saying to her, "Hey, kid! Hey, kid! Kid!" She looked at me funny each time. Finally, she said, "Kid, you're weird." And you already know the story. I told you on the other side about how I saw her at Forest City over the summer. But I didn't tell you something else. When I went home that night and my parents were out in the garden, actually it was still light outside, I decided to act out my sadistic feelings toward her. So what I did was, I didn't know whether to feel affectionate toward her or sadistic. So I guess it was combined together as sadistic affection. So I went from the top of the stairs of my parents' house, ran down real fast, jumped, skipped a few steps, landed on the ground, and momentum carried me forward, and I threw myself into the door. I made believe that I was her little brother. She didn't have a little brother, but I made believe she might have, and that I was showing affection for her by smashing her head through a wooden door. I had to play all 3 parts to do it. I had to play the part of me smashing her head through a door, running down the stairs, and then I had to kneel down on the floor and make believe that I was her with her head smashed through the wooden door, and then I had to get up and play the part of me coming to comfort her. And I made believe she was there. "Oh, you think you killed me? I think I'm going to die. You smashed my head through a door, and now I'm blind." And then I started to feel guilty about it, so I decided to try and be affectionate after that. So when I saw her in Fisher Fazio's supermarket, I snapped my fingers, singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" in a high voice, imitating Alvin the Chipmunk to get her attention. And she was smiling a little bit. I don't know if it was about what I was doing while she was over there with her mom. And as they went out the door, I said to her, "Hey, kid! Hey, kid!" I didn't give a shit that she was with her mother. I still said, "Hey, kid," and both of them just ignored me. And then the following morning, Saturday morning, I bowled on my bowling league with my friend Rick, and I went to look at the rosters to see if she was bowling on the Gillisweek League, and sure enough, she was, and I decided, that's it. Next Friday night, I'm going to be down here watching her. And I figured maybe I'd even get up the guts to talk to her, and I even decided in advance to take money with me so that I could buy her a ginger ale and or a candy bar. How did I get Rick for my friend? Well, that's another story somewhat. He was in science class with me up there at Lewis F. Mayer Junior High, and we had a project where we had to write about what we liked or disliked about our old school and what we liked or disliked about our junior high that we now were in, or something like that. And I complained that nobody would be my friend, and Rick, I guess, took sympathy for me. He had been trying to work his way into my life since like 5th or 6th grade or even 4th grade of elementary school. And so I gave him my address because he asked for it, and he said he'd come over on the weekend or something like that, or in the evening, one weeknight or something. And while I was in the backyard playing wiffle ball by myself, yes, at 13, he came over. And I had given him the wrong address. I gave him the right house number, but the wrong street, one street over. But he found me anyway. He came over with this other guy, Lou, and so we played ball games in the backyard. Baseball. I went and got my softball, the harder one, since he was over, and we played basketball and other stuff. And then I finally went up to his house, and it was later on, he got me on the team, his bowling team, and we bowled together every Saturday morning. That meant I had to get up early Saturday morning to go bowling, and afterward I would go over his house or he would come over mine. I remember one day when we sat there across from each other, he came over, and my mom made sloppy joes for us to eat and a candy bar for dessert, and we sat there we sat across from each other eating sloppy joes and grinning at each other. That was one of my better moments. Eating sloppy joes and grinning at each other. It would have been more fun to do it with Diane, Rawson instead. Mrs. Rawson. Damn, I hope this tape never finds its way into the hands and ears of Diane Rawson. But it's an underground tape and it's not copyrighted, so what the hell. Anyway, back to about Diane. So the following Friday came. It was the first Friday in October, 1974, and at first my mom wanted to come with her to do some things. I got out at 2:30 from Lewis F. Mayer, and Diane didn't get out of Gillis Sweet Elementary until, this was in Fairview Park, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, in the USA. Anyway, she didn't get out till an hour later, 3:30. I was up with my mom at a place that sold seasonal stuff called Moskatel's, Moskatel''S, and she said, okay, go ahead, go where you're going to go, and I stood inside the door hiding, waiting for Diane to come walking, and sure enough, there she was. I waited till she got a little ahead toward the bowling alley, and I snuck out and followed her, hoping she wouldn't turn around and look, and she didn't. And when I went down to the bowling alley, the bowling lanes and the places where the bowlers sat was set downwards, one step downward, about a foot downward from the rest of the floor, and I was on the upper part, on the upper deck, on the seat at a table by Diane's team. See, the girls that time were bowling in lanes 1 through 10, and the boys were in 11 through 20. And so I was on the girls' side, and I remember one of her teammates, Michelle, coming and asking me why I was on the girls' side, and I wouldn't say why. I wasn't going to tell anyone that I was in love with Diane, because it would have embarrassed her, and who knows, it might have screwed me up. But anyway, I sat down there, and I took note of everything she said and did and what she was wearing, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper at home, or even there when she wasn't looking. I can't remember. At home, I had my bedroom closet, which was on the a little bit on the big side, was used as my clubhouse. I had my own little clubhouse, upside down cardboard boxes for tables, a red marker-stained pillow looked like blood. I had an extension cord going in there for a little lamp, and my radio, and I would listen to music in there and pretend I was in there with Diane. But anyway, every Friday I was down at that bowling alley to watch Diane. But Mrs. Whitaker, one of the PTA mothers, and Mrs. Freshwater, and maybe one other, Mrs. Flash, and Casey, we called him Casey, his real name was Mr. Kaczynski, owned the bowling alley, and they didn't like us older kids down there because they felt that we were a distraction to the younger kids, and so they tried to make us leave, but I would always sneak down or hide, and some of the other kids would get mad at me for that. Not Diane, of course. And one time Mrs. Whitaker said my name right over the loudspeaker. Did I get embarrassed? Not really. I was almost expecting Diane to say something, but she didn't. And it's like one day I was making all kinds of loud noises and weird antics to get her attention. Everybody had their eyes on me. Everyone was looking at me funny. Some people were grinning from ear to ear. Everybody was paying attention to me except her. She was just sitting there looking at the floor, looking into space like she didn't even know what was going on. It's almost as if she knew I was doing it to get her attention. Maybe she did. Maybe she knew. Some say that that's true, that she didn't know. Meanwhile, at school, I was acting up because I figured that she should love me for being a maniac. And I also had this thing where I wanted to go back to the 4th grade. I was hoping they would say, I was hoping that the junior high would say I was too immature for junior high, and that my maturity was such that I needed to go back to the 4th grade. And I fantasized that, because even my mom at one point there said, you shouldn't go over to Gillis Sweet, Joe. You maybe end up having to go back there because you're not doing so well, and there's no point in you making of a nuisance of yourself over there at Gillis Sweet. But I did sneak over there once. I stood across the street and was watching for Diane to come out, and that was, I think, before I started going to the bowling alley. I think it was earlier in the week before Friday. But I found out where she lived, what her phone number was and all that, and I on one weekend I called up her house, left her phone ring, and hung up, gave hang-up calls. I must have did about 10 times in a row, and I bragged to Rick's friend Lou, and he said, I wouldn't do that if I were you. See, Rick and Lou, they made a prank phone call from a payphone, and they were talking about, do you want to take a chance on getting convicted? To Rick and Lou to each other, they were saying that. And then they asked me if I wanted to get convicted. I was afraid at first, but once I saw them do it, and then Rick let me do it at his house, and we did it, taping it on the tape recorder. We called a drugstore and stuff, and we called a guy. I dialed a random number, and then it was like I started getting the guts to do it. In fact, I got to the point where I pick up the phone to prank somebody, call a random number, and Rick said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm pranking somebody. He said, Joe, you should not prank anybody. He was pissed at me. At one point there, we got into an argument when I was up at his house because I don't remember what it was about, but I got mad and threw his stuffed animals on the floor, and he told me to go home. At one point there, he also got mad because I said that this other guy, Doug, who I had been friends with and was getting back with after not having talked to him all summer, and he was a little hesitant to talk to me at first because I was misbehaving so much, taking the phones off the hooks and leaving the receiver dangle. But I said to Rick that I wanted to be with Doug instead, and Rick said, why? And I said, because Doug Klein is perfect. He says, and he got mad at me one point and says, well, go over and hang around with Doug Klein then if he's so perfect. At one point there, he was mad at me. He says, and he offered me this little motor from a little motorized toy car, and he said, you want this? I said, yeah. He said, well then, here, and he threw it at me, and purposely he missed me, and it went into his wall, and he said, I'm sorry to do that to you, Joe, but you just make a person so mad. Now look what you made me do. Now I gotta paint my wall here all over again. I wonder if I could have done that at Diane's house. I wonder if she would have thrown a little toy motor at me. And there was this other incident where I was up at Rick's house one day. This is one of the most cherished moments, only I wish it had happened with Diane at her house instead. Okay, this is what happened. Rick had to get on the phone with Lou across the streets, and I wanted something to drink. So he gave me some orange juice to drink while I was waiting for him to get off the phone, and while I was waiting for his mom to finish cooking us some lunch. And so I sat there drinking some orange juice while he was talking, and I swallowed it the wrong way. I started choking on it, so I exaggerated, choked real loud, and made out like I was dying. I threw myself on the floor. So Rick came over and said, Joe, get up! And he got me up off the floor and sat me in the chair, and then patted me down on the back real hard, slapped me on the back, and then he asked me if I was okay. I said, yeah, I'm better. And he went over got back on the phone with Lou, and Lou asked him what was going on, what happened with me, and Rick just said, nothing. He choked on some orange juice. I would have liked to have done that at Diane's house and choked on her orange juice on her kitchen floor and seen what her reaction would be. Then she'd have to get me off the floor and sit me in the chair and swap me down on the back, and then get back on the phone with her girlfriend, her best friend Kathy Eckelman, and then Kathy would ask, what's going on with Joe? And she'd say, nothing. He choked on some orange juice. Diane's dad, he was a truck driver. He wore a jacket with an American flag on the sleeve, a flag on his jacket. Yeah, one time in December, after my hair had grown over my ears, I went up there and I found her house, and I stood across the street on the sidewalk at the neighbors across the street, staring at her house. I could see in the window a little bit, her kitchen window, and I saw a light, a lamp, and I stood there. I went there for like 15 minutes staring into her house, at her house, and I went down the street to the payphone and made a hang-up call, and then I went back. Finally, her father came out and said to me, who are you looking for, honey? And I said, no, and I was just resting. It was embarrassing being called honey by him. I would have rather have been called honey by Diane. Around that time I heard a song by Tom Jones where he was singing, yeah, yeah, there's something about you, baby, I like, and I was asking for it at the library because I wasn't hearing it on the radio anymore, and after a while, and in one part of the song, the guy sang, I'm standing on the corner, hiding by the telephone, and I said, I was singing along with it and saying, adding my own words, harassing somebody on the phone. Because I was trying to be a delinquent. I was trying to beat the burnouts at their own game and be more of a delinquent than they were. After all, they commit crimes. They sell drugs, they take drugs, and so I was trying to be a burnout and commit every crime in the book, and prank phone calls was one of them. And I did an obscene dance in the parking lot in rhythm to the band playing the music, and 50 pairs of eyes were staring at me, and my mom got so mad at me for it because it was a dance that was simulating masturbating, and my mom was so mad at me because she was picking me up and it embarrassed her, and she hit me on the back with a book in the car, and when she got home she threatened she was going to beat me. So as soon as she pulled in the driveway, I opened the door and took off, and she was threatening that she was going to call the police on me, and I stayed away until my dad came home, and then my dad calmed her down, and I promised I wasn't going to do it again, and I was told by my parents not to mention about it in school, but I went ahead and did it anyway, and I said to one kid, hey, guess what? On last weekend, on Friday night, my mom almost called the police because I was rubbing my dick in the library parking lot. And so it got around the school. People were saying to me, hey, why'd your mother almost call the police? And I responded, because I was rubbing my dick in the library parking lot. Anyway, when Halloween came, I was down in the bowling alley the next day after Halloween, and Diane was there sharing a candy bar or something with her friend, but she didn't share any with me. Boo-hoo-hoo. Ain't that sad? I think so. It's a pity. It's a real terrible pity. Anyway, in November or so, I finally bought myself a tape recorder, and thinking about Diane made me act up into it, and when I played it back and had fun listening to myself, I fantasized that Diane would be there listening and laughing and thinking I was funny. She should have, and she should have loved me for being a maniac, but there was a part of me that says, no, she ain't gonna love me for being a maniac. So I decided to knuckle down and do better in my schoolwork. But right before I did, the English teacher sent me to the office because some kid had started something with me, and I tried to get back at him for it, get even with him for it. He tried to knock my feet out from under me at my locker. A lot of kids tried to do that to me because I constantly taunted and agitated them, gave them the finger, called them names, and made faces at them. so I said to the kid, "You die in English." And when I went to English, I tried to start a fight with him, and when he tried to come at me, I lifted up my sharp pencil at him. I was going to stab him with it, and the teacher stopped me and then took me down to the office. And when I got there, I ended up talking to the assistant principal, and the principal, and I was telling him, he was asking me all kinds of questions about me because he thought that I had severe psychological problems, and I told him about how the year before, how I had pushed down a kid and knocked out his tooth, and I thought it was funny that the principal asked me if the police got involved, and I told him no. He put it down on his records that I gave the kid a concussion. And then I ended up talking to the Director of Pupil Services. He gave me my yearly IQ test and tested me in other areas, and then called my mom up for a chat because of all my behavior, including getting into fights and masturbating in class, or simulating masturbating in class. And so my mom said, well, if he's that far gone, I guess I'll take him to a psychiatrist. He recommended this guy, Dr. Hilton. So I had to start going there. But Mr. D, who was the Director of Pupil Services, said that I would not be able to get good grades the next quarter. But I decided to surprise him. In fact, I had pulled, we had, before the grading period was ended, see, we got report cards every 9 weeks, but in the middle of the 9-week periods, we got the interim reports, or something, whatever they called them, and it said that I was failing English, but I managed to bring myself all the way up to a C in the remaining 4.5 weeks by diligently working hard, and by the next grading period, I had a B on my report card in English. And I had also pulled myself up to a B in social studies after having gotten an F. And why was I doing it? Because I was hoping to win my way into the heart of Diane. And I was doing other things to try and win my way into the heart of Diane. I figured I had to become a more interesting person. I had to be a winner at something, and maybe a bunch of things. And here's one of the things I did. I decided I was going to be the only person in Ohio to grow banana trees in my house. And so I told my mom I wanted to grow things, learn horticulture, and this is one of the things I did. We planted under her fluorescent lights, because she grew a lot of plants herself. I decided to try and grow a pine tree. And I started to grow it, but then it got diseased and died later on. But I tried to grow a banana tree too. I took a slice of banana, put it under some soil in a pot, and put a cover over it, and put it over the heater in the living room, the heat duct. And this is what happened. The living room smelled of bananas, and the project failed. So much for trying to win my way into the heart of Diane by growing banana trees. Yeah, I used to hear and talk a lot about bananas that year. Miss Sitlak, the guidance counselor, she called me a banana. She said that Diane probably, when I said to her, "Hey kid," thought I was a banana. And I made up this joke about putting banana peels on railroad tracks, because back then I thought that if you do, that the train would go off the track. I know now that the banana peel would just get squashed, but I used to say, what do you get when you cross a banana peel with a railroad track? And my answer was a derailment. And I also had this other joke that I made up, this nonsense joke, because I was trying to be funny. What do you get when you cross your dick with your ass? I don't remember what my answer was to that. Something else before I forget. In social studies class, there was this kid named Jerry, and there was this girl named Allison, and he was always doing things to bug her, to get her attention, I guess, because I think he was kind of in love with her. One day, he took a peace treaty that the social studies teacher threw in the garbage can, a copy of a peace treaty. He took it out. He was making like he was looking at it, and then he tried to break it over Allison's head. And when he thought the teacher wasn't looking, and the teacher heard him trying to rip it over her head, and she looked over at him and said, "Easy, Jerry." I would have liked to have gone back to the 4th grade and tried to break a peace treaty over Diane's head to show affection. And one time she tried to move Allison away from Jerry, saying, "You don't have to put up with that crap." And we laughed because the teachers don't usually talk like that. They weren't supposed to. But anyway, he was sitting there taking his notebook and fanning her with it, and then he reached over like he was trying to take her comb, and people had been looking at him and seeing him in action, and the teacher looked over and saw him fanning her, and then he kind of laughed, and some other people kind of laughed, and Allison was laughing out of embarrassment. So Jerry, he starts laughing like a maniac, and everybody's looking at him, and it was so funny. His face was turning red. He was falling out of his chair. I would have liked to have gone back to the 4th grade and be in class with Diane and done that with her. And there was this kid in my class named Higginbotham, and I call him Higginbottom the Schmligginbottom, or Higginbottom the Schmigginbottom. And one time in study hall, I had a piece of food caught between my teeth, and I unstuck it with my nail or my tongue or both, and I aimed it, and I went, and it hit his cheek and stuck on there, and so Higginbottom had to push it off and later and asked me to knock it off and to get to work, because I have work to do, which I did, homework, but I'd rather goof off at that time. And another time I crumpled up a piece of paper and threw it at him, and I said to him, "I hope I insulted you." And he just looked at me calmly and said, "You didn't insult me." Anyhow, Christmas came, and one of the things I got for Christmas, besides the tape recorder that I bought for myself, which was my favorite gift of all of them, I also got from my parents honeysuckle candies. And on the radio at that same time, there was a song that came on where the guy sang, "It's only me and you and a honeysuckle do." And I think the rest of it was, "I can sing mellow too, and there's no doubt you love me too. What time of day should I sing my song? Should I sing it in the evening before anything goes wrong?" It would have been so much nicer to have been able to spend Christmas with Diane. And after Mr. R, her dad, called me honey, I decided to get a haircut, but then I regretted it and decided to let it grow long. And so in March, right around the spring, when the warm weather set in, my hair was long down in my eyes and sticking out wild on the side, and I was bobbing up and down in my bedroom with the tape recorder in my dresser drawer, and doing knee bends to the music, bobbing up and down, and the chest, the sweat pouring down my chest, and me admiring my long, wild hair, and figuring that Diane Rawson should love me for being a maniac again. And that was after the grading period, well, wrong after the grading period, where I tried to do better, because I got some good grades, and that was in the 2nd grading period, which ended in late January. And then I started acting up again, and Rick and Doug, by that time, were coming into the guidance office with me, trying to help me, and all concerned about why I was acting up. And Rick came up with a theory, while Doug was saying, "Why is it? Is it because I'm coming into the guidance office with you now? Is it because of industrial arts? Is it because the grading period is over?" and all that. And Rick had the theory. He said to Miss Sitlak, the counselor, "Well, ever since he got his tape recorder, he's been acting up again." And it was because I couldn't make up my mind how to win my way into the heart of Diane. It was like, see, the same way Rick and Doug were trying to help steer me in the right direction, I wanted Diane to do it instead. Or maybe her to join in with the rest of them, but she was just ignoring me and not giving me the compensation that I need. She was the one I wanted to pay attention to me. And you know what I often wonder? I wonder what would have happened if I had had the guts to go to the junior high dance, because some girl did, in my own grade, did ask me if I wanted to go, and I turned down the offer. And what would have happened if I had gone to the junior high dance taking 4th grade Diane Rawson, if, assuming they would have let me? What would my classmates have thought? And I used to bite my shirt to music in my room. I wonder what Diane would have thought if I did that. Would I have embarrassed her? If I did, she should have just told me if I had done it. If she had gone with me, and she should have. One time I went up to the bowling alley, it was Christmas break or something like that, And there was no bowling that day. It bummed me out because Friday was the only day I could really see Diane. Her mom gave her a ride home from every place, especially school, home from school, every single day just about. And I did not tell anyone that I liked a younger girl. My mom did suspect that I liked some girl in elementary school, but she thought I was in love with a girl who was about 11 in the 6th grade. She had no idea probably that I was in love with a girl in the 4th grade. When she would say, I was on my way up to the bowling alley, she'd say, "Going to see a girl, Joe?" I'd say, "No, I'm going to watch the other kids bowl so I can get some ideas, some pointers on how to bowl better." But she knew better because she had brothers who did the same thing. I remember on the last day of school, I took a bike ride up to her school, and I followed her home. Her mom finally let her go home from school by herself. She was on her bicycle, which had a big orange flag so nobody would run into her or run her over. And I remember on my bicycle dodging behind apartment buildings so that she wouldn't see me following her. And then she went up one street, and I knew which way she would be coming, so I went up another street so I could kind of cut her off and see her on the other end, but without her seeing me. So I had to race up like a maniac and get beyond the street she was going to come down, and up the other street and hide behind a car so I could look and see her go by, and that's what I did. And then later on in the evening, after I had gone home for dinner at my parents', I went back out and I just casually rode by her house on my bicycle, and she was out there with her friend on the front lawn. She was wearing white shorts, short white pants. And I thought to myself, oh man, this sucks. I'm not going to be able to see her for the rest of the summer because I did not have the balls to go up to her house and knock on her door or ring her doorbell and say, "Can Diane come out to play?" No, I didn't have the nerve for that. Mrs. Rawson at one point did speak to me while I was down there, and I don't know, I kind of think that she was a good little girl, and I wanted to be the one that would turn her into a bad little girl and be with me. But I also had this thing, I figured her dad didn't want her having boyfriends, and I was right, because when she got to be 12, she wasn't allowed to go on dates even then, not until her dad said so. And the more liberal fantasy was that I was going to prove to her dad that it was true love, and that it was divinely ordered by God's graces that we were to be together forevermore. And so we could have gotten engaged. So much for that fantasy. Now, I was really an atheist at the time, but I figured that I would be what they wanted me to be so I could have Diane. Oh well, I guess I was being a hypocrite. There isn't much more time left on this tape, so I'm going to leave you with a song that I would have liked to have played for Diane when she was 9 and I was 13. Listen to the lyrics closely.
Feeling deep in your heart, you want to go out, but it's raining out there. I want you to know I care, I do. There's no one like you. When they take you someplace and you sit in a chair, I want you to know I care. When you tell a big lie and your parents are mean, when being grown up is a faraway dream, when they're filling your teeth and cutting your hair, I want you to know I care, I do. There's no one like you. I mention your name when I'm saying my prayers. I want you to know I care. When you have a bad cold and you can't go out, when you sit for a week with that thing in your mouth, when you sleep in the dark and there's something out there, I want you to know.
And I should be able to be with you, Diane.
I care, I do. There's no one like you. And love you too much.
Just a wee bit more time. Don't you wish? I wish they had music like this in 1974, 75, my junior high years, and me be able to listen to it. Diane and I could have really spread muscles in our brains. This is Beharit from Drawing Down the Moon. Yeah! Yeah! Ah! Hope you enjoyed this tape.